time to head into the game. Figure out who is going to leave here 3-0. Christopher Hahn going up against Luca Ceribelli. Right away, it's going to be a restricted v restricted. And a Xian Pao next to the Zamazenta for Chris. And all of a sudden, this Whimsicott next to the Miraidon for Luca.
Yeah, you've got that access to the light screen. Not going to be useful against these physical attackers on Chris's side of the field, but the Xian Pao really nicely positioned here, especially if it can outspeed the Miraidon. You would expect it to be max speed, and the Miraidon may not be on Luca's side, so going to be able to get that the icicle move off onto that to remove the terrain, get rid of that electric terrain, which gives a little bit more support to Zamazenta if that's not there, so the power increase isn't there with the Hadron engine. But the Whimsicott in a nice position as well to just get a Moonblast, potentially get that Xian Pao onto its sash, utilize the Miraidon potentially to get a Volt Switch into that slot, but you've got to be careful because you don't want to lose Miraidon too early in this game. I think it's a really important piece of the puzzle for Luca.
Well, terrestrialization is going to be a part of this puzzle on this very first turn as none other than the Zamazenta. Make sure you go into this Dragon type to take as little damage as possible, at least from something like a Volt Switch or an Electro Drift from Luca. Tailwind, though, if you're worried about the speed ties, this is a great way to be able to break that, making sure your Pokemon are going to be the speediest. Volt Switch into the Zamazenta, still a decent amount of damage thanks to electric terrain, but now Luca does get this swap. Pokemon could be taking Mirage hits when it comes in, so I'm curious what's picked. The Lunala. So this is going to be something that could withstand those hits a little bit better, especially with that Electric Seed. You do get this defensive boost. Now to see where Christopher has targeted on this turn. Ice Spinner getting rid of this terrain, but so little damage into this Lunala. Now that electricity is gone, only Zamazenta left. Whimsicott gone from the field. Tailwind and out of here.
Yeah, it's a nice play there from Christopher, kind of not overextending into that Miraidon slot, potentially knowing that the Miraidon might get the Tailwind boost, get off the field very quickly, and going after the Whimsicott, the one supporting option that Luca really leans into a lot, and that is now removed. So the Encore isn't an issue going forward. You don't need to worry about getting locked into anything you don't want to, and now the Miraidon for Luca, nice to get that Volt Switch off. You've got the Tailwind set up, so you're in a really good position to threaten that Zamazenta that's now that Dragon Terror, so the Draco Meteor into that slot is really threatening a knockout. And does Christopher have something in the back that he can maybe switch in to soak up the damage there?
Yeah, that Tailwind and just being able to pivot out that Miraidon, you now have this electric terrain back, so Ice Spinner kind of just really negated on that first turn.
And you've got the Dazzling Gleam as well from the Miraidon here. I mean, there is the Wide Guard, so you've got to be careful about clicking into that, because if Wide Guard comes out, it kind of gives the Xian Pao a little bit of a freedom to go for whatever it wants, but that is a risk as well.
Yeah, so that's where you can make the call, because if you're calling for the Dazzling Gleam and just Wide Guard, I mean, Draco Meteor, even Electro Drift into Xian Pao, there is so much offense there, but it's time for Luca to also click that terrestrialization button through Lunala into this Fairy type. And when we're looking and eyeing up something like this Moonblast, this is only going to amplify the damage on this turn. Xian Pao wants absolutely none of this, though, protecting at least for this turn, so going to be safe from all damage. And the Zamazenta as well, so a great opportunity for Chris to wait out one of these turns of Tailwind and get the information on what Luca was wanting to do and see where the lock-in is well for the Miraidon. Now you have that information. Choice Specs, Draco Meteor, and Moonblast as well.
Yeah, and this is a really difficult position for Christopher because you've got the terrestrialization on the Lunala. It is going to be subjected to super effective damage from the Zamazenta. Its Shadow Shield broke as well. So there is a potential of some big damage into there, especially even with the double up from the Xian Pao going for a Sucker Punch, expecting that Moonblast. So you've got to be careful in that spot. But the Miraidon now in the Tailwind is protecting that Lunala so well from any threat of those Steel type attacks from the Zamazenta, being able to go for these Draco Meteors first.
It is going to be a Draco Meteor miss. You get the opportunity with the Miraidon, but a critical miss there.
Oh.
And the Ice Spinner into it is more than enough to get this one-hit KO. How devastating for this Miraidon. That is definitely a great opportunity for a Grizz and a great shift of the battle. Body press into the Lunala is not going to be too much damage. The Trick Room now, anticipating that once this Tailwind starts to peter out, that Luke can be having this Dimensions of Choice. And I think, too, maybe a little indication of that last Pokemon, none other than this Ursaluna.
Yeah, it's a great time with the Trick Rooms, especially when the Ursaluna is about to come onto the field. You've got to take a turn to maybe protect here to get that Flame Orb activated to maximize the damage. you've got the time to do that as well. Lunala, really unfortunate there that Luca missed that Draco Meteor, because the Zamazenta is no doubt off the field if that happens. And you can maybe see what the body press was doubling into that Miraidon, just in case there was a switch there, or maybe you missed the knockout with the Ice Spinner, but knowing that it's taken down the Miraidon now off the field. But still, Luca in a pretty commanding position, especially with this Ursaluna now intact, and you've got the Terastallization on the Lunala that is threatening super effective damage onto both of these targets.
I'm looking over at Luca's face. Looks like a little bit of stress, at least at this turn, but playing this one out, it is going to be the protects from Christopher and eyeing up Luca's side. When we do see that Ursaluna, this one is just going to go all out on the offense, not waiting for the Guts activation and the headlong rush. But again, Christopher safe past this turn, and to figure out where you could go next turn going forward.
Yeah, you're going for the double up into the Zamazenta there. Really not maybe that concerned about the Chempa. I think you still need to be. Now you've got that Flame Orb activated, so Facade going to be active to do more damage, especially into the Zamazenta now. If you don't want to go for that headlong rush and take those defense drops, but you can't ignore the Chempa here. It is going to hit for good damage into that Ursaluna. It is going to be subjected to those ice type attacks. But at the moment, Luca kind of in that position where you can go for either target.
Gonna go for the target with a focus hat. So Xian Pao not gonna be dropped quite yet, holding on with 1 HP after the attack. Moonblast from Lunala, though, can take care of this Pokemon, but instead targeting Zamazenta. It will take care of that one instead. Zamazenta goes down, and this will finally be the opportunity to get a glimpse of what 2 Pokemon Christopher has in the back to bring into this match.
Yeah, you've got to say now that Ice Spinner probably going to do enough damage. Is it going to be close enough to pick up the knockout? It's not. So the Ursaluna are going to be able to stick around for at least one more turn, and that's not what you want to be seeing if you are Christopher. They do have access to Sucker Punch, which is a great opportunity to just kind of remove that threat, even in the Trick Room environment. Last Pokemon here is Raging Bolt. Terastallization's being eaten up, and it all comes down to which Pokemon is going to outspeed which in the Trick Room. Is it going to be the Lunala? Is it going to be able to get that Moonblast off into the Raging Bolt before the Raging Bolt can attack into it? And still, you've got to say, is the Raging Bolt going to have enough in the tank to be able to remove that Lunala, even if it gets through this turn?
That's going to be the big question, and one that we might have to wait for an answer for, as Christopher has been playing a very passive game so far, has been really making sure that every second turn is protected when you are eyeing up stuff like the Trick Room on the opposing end to wait it out. So double protect, and again, just getting a little bit more information with where Luca thinks these threats are. Splitting up the attacks. Now, we're getting closer to the end of this Trick Room, but Ursaluna also getting to the end of its own timer, because that burn damage is starting to stack up.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You've got to really make the most of these next couple of turns while the Trick Room's still in effect, because once that's gone, the Chempa then has a little bit more of an advantage to get attacks up before both of these, and that's when things can get a little bit dangerous. We're seeing a Protect here from Saluna, maybe expecting a Sucker Punch into that slot.
Yeah, when you're looking at the Ursaluna that needs the damage, I mean, a Protect makes sense, so the Lunala can maybe get rid of it. So Sucker Punch, nothing, and Thunderclap a decent amount into that bat on the opposing end. Moonblast now from the Lunala, targeting instead into this Raging Bolt, but look at that damage coming on out with the help of that Terastallization. 1-hit KO, and all of a sudden, Christopher is down to final 2 Pokemon as well.
Yeah, that's a huge knockout there. You think, okay, can the Raging Bolt maybe hang on? It's going to be very close, but of course, Christopher still has one restricted in the back, and it all comes down to this. Doing very well in between turns to get those protects off, because it's all about stalling out these Trick Room turns to allow this Calyrex to come onto the field, to be in a position to close things out. And as you've already mentioned, the Ursaluna on that timer, really because of the burn tick, 2 turns is going to go down to that if it's not taken down before then with an attack.
And with the amount of damage you've already did, you don't even have to be playing any sort of wide games. You can just go one target. So first off, Ursaluna has been picked off, and eyeing at this Lunala that's already been taking so much damage. This Calyrex Shadow Rider, you know it's in a prime spot. Lunala is down, and it's going to be Christopher Hahn to take the first game of this set.
Yeah, extremely well played there from Christopher. Cool, calm, and collected the entire way through that. When it looked, there was situations, Trick Room going up, it didn't look good. Ursaluna coming in, you think, oh, things aren't looking that great for you, but really not kind of swaying there, knowing the game plan, protecting when it was the right time to do it, and then having that Calyrex waiting in the back to come in and just close up shop was really well done, especially being able to kind of keep that Chempa as well as he did throughout the game.
It was so well played when you're eyeing up that Luca had the board in this situation. You have the Tailwind at the beginning, and then all of a sudden you get the Trick Room when your slower Pokemon comes in, and definitely cannot take away the fact that Christopher played through the situation so well. I am curious, though, about the turn with the Miraidon with that Draco Meteor.
Yeah.
How much that could have impacted this match, because being able to take care of that Zamazenta would have been so nice, and all of a sudden you lost your Pokemon on that turn for essentially free.
I think it would. I think that was definitely a pivotal moment and really unfortunate for Luca. I mean, you're using a move that has a little bit less accuracy, and that can happen. But I think the knock-on effect that it had, it would have forced the Raging Bull to come out into the field. We saw that it went down to a Moonblast, so the Lunala would have been able to kind of pick that up quite quickly, and then it forces that Calyrex out in the Trick Room environment where it's not in that favorable position. Unfortunately, because of the miss, it meant Miraidon didn't really get much value out of any at that game entirely. Came onto the field, it threatened, it pressured with that Draco Meteor, missed, and then got knocked out by the Ice Spinner, which was a little bit unfortunate. I think if we look at Luca going into game 2, if you can do a similar thing but get a bit more value out of the Miraidon this time, I think it might be a different story, but you can't underestimate how well Chris is playing this first game.
I mean, there was the opportunity to stick with what almost worked, but instead we're going to see a switch up, but not from one trainer, but from both. Right away, Luca, it's going to be that Incineroar and that Urshifu, and Christopher going for that Calyrex Shadow Rider and this Ogerpon, which we didn't get to see in that game 1.
Yeah, it's a nice lead here. Adjustment from Luca with the Urshifu here, maybe keeping the Restrictors in the back for a later point, and maybe expecting that Chen Pao saying, okay, I'm going to bring a couple of Pokemon here that can deal with that, and Christopher adjusting so well here. Now the Calyrex in a great position to put good damage onto the field. Has to be a little bit careful about the Incineroar, but perfectly paired up with that Ogerpon that offers that follow me support this time around.
Yeah, and no worries about the Urshifu because it is out of here, and Ursaluna instead. Follow me, so when you're calling out that impact Incineroar can have, of course, it's not going to be into the Calyrex Shadow Rider. Psychic single target into that Ursaluna. That is a lot of damage already to be starting out this match. Knockoff now into this Ogerpon. Not nearly the damage that Luca wanted in return, and now there's going to be that burn, but when the Ursaluna's already taken so much damage, and it is just naturally outsped in this board position, this looks really, really strong for Chris.
Yeah, really strong. And what options do you have for Luca to switch that Pokemon out? Do you just sack it and allow something? You've only brought one restricted to this game. Is it going to be the Miraidon? You could say probably not. More likely be that Lunala, knowing that you've got the Ursaluna. So what do you do in this situation here? But we are just seeing a protect from the Calyrex.
It's going to be a double protect yet again from Chris. At this point, it feels like the staple within this Swiss set at least, but not going to be the only one. Luca as well, the protect onto the Ursaluna. Now the Incineroar, when we're looking at the opportunity for Luca to try and pivot out, with Christopher going for that double protect, that U-turn from the Incineroar means nothing. It's stuck on the field. Luca didn't get to bring a Pokemon in, and again, Ursaluna's days are just numbered.
Yeah, they are. It feels very difficult from this spot, and Christopher's capitalizing and putting that pressure on. And like you say, just being able to prevent the Incineroar from pivoting out there was really useful, and being getting another tick of burn onto that Ursaluna. But your Luca's still in that same position. The Incineroar really not threatened here, but it wants to get off the field and allow potentially that Lunala onto the field. But if you lose your Ursaluna, then the effectiveness of your Trick Room is kind of not. It's about 50% of what it could be, and not in the best spot. So Christopher just needs to keep doing what he's doing. Luca got everything to do going into this next turn.
Especially too, since Luca had already protected that Ursaluna. If he wanted to try and preserve it, it was only the 1 and 3. So a switch here, you can tell that the Ursaluna definitely is a part of this plan, as Lunala is just going to be hard switched onto the field. You're not going to be taking an attack from the Ogerpon though, since Chris does have to be careful to make sure this Calyrex Shadow Rider is preserved. And the Psychic now into the Lunala, thanks to the Shadow Shield, not necessarily going to be the most damage. Now Incineroar has the opportunity to switch out, but instead go in more on the offensive, the Flare Blitz, but still this Ogerpon is just soaking up all of these hits.
Yeah, and I think that's a good thing that Luca's trying to do, is remove this redirection support. Once that has dropped, it means that you can then target into the big threat, which is the Calyrex, but the whole time it is sticking on the field. You're giving it more opportunities to potentially get knockouts that it really is looking for, and activating that Grim Neigh ability to get those boosts, which is going to make it even stronger. Now you've got your Lunala on the field. Now you've got an opportunity to try and stick the Trick Room up, but with that Shadow Shield broken, you are going to be susceptible to the Astral Barrage if that comes out, especially that it's quite easy for Christopher to click into now, knowing you've got that Follow Me to protect the Calyrex going into this next turn.
Yeah, and if you want to go for the Trick Room, then yeah, as you called out, the Astral Barrage, and if you will go for the Wide Guard, then nothing really gets done on the turn, especially since Chris has not been afraid to be clicking those single target moves. but now we're finally going to see this terrestrialization coming out. Ogerpon, it has been a great defensive piece so far for Chris, especially with this redirection, but this terrestrialization spells, I want to be a part of this match. Embody Aspect, this is going to be the attack raise onto this turn, but not the only terrestrialization as well. Luca is going to be clicking the button, and Lunala, you're talking about taking a lot of hit from an Astro Barrage. Now terrestrialization is dropped and could also has the opportunity to go on to the offensive. Whether it gets this chance is going to be the big question. Calyrex Shadow first off with the Psychic, so much damage, and now it's going to be Ogerpon with the follow-up. Ivy Cudgel with that attack raise. Lunala's already been taking so much damage, and it is gone.
Yeah, and you can see how much that meant to Christopher, especially when he saw the terrestrialization happening from the Lunala. Called it perfectly there and got rid of, not worrying about the Incineroar there, thinking, okay, I'm just going to go after this Lunala. I'm going to stop your Trick Room completely outright. It doesn't matter as long as this Pokemon goes down, and making a really brave call there with the Psychic into that slot. If we didn't see it terrestrialize, I don't know if the combination after the Intimidate onto the Ogerpon would have been enough. Psychic, Ivy Cudgel might have just missed it, and then Luca would have been in a way better position, but really committing to it hard and it paying off dividends.
And this is a really tough board state for Luca now because, as you called out, only one restricted was brought to the match. Lunala's gone. You have an Ursaluna that's down to almost none, and you can already see the head shake from Luca. I think a little anticipation of what is to come. This has been such a commanding game from Chris, and it's going to be a set that is secured in a 2-0 victory. Now 3-0 on the day here in Anaheim. Great start to the tournament for Chris.
Absolutely incredible, yeah, and going up against the reigning world champion as well, and such dominant form to be able to lead. The adjustment into game 2 was just so well done from Chris. You've got to give him all the credit there, because I think what you saw from Luca was an adjustment from that game 1, bringing the Urshifu, expecting maybe the Chen Power to cause so many issues once again, but Chris seeing straight through that and saying, no, I'm going to lead up with something that's going to give you issues if you bring an answer for that Chen Power, and give Luca all the problems. To switch into the Ursaluna, great call by Christopher, going for the Psychic into that slot and getting the damage there, which kind of pinned him into a position where, okay, well, I have to make a decision. Do I sack the Ursaluna or do I try and get the Lunala in? Well, you got the Lunala in, but the Shadow Shield's broken, and then from there, things just started falling apart, and the dominoes were in place for Chris to kind of take that match. It was so well executed. Sorry.
Yeah. And